Today on the newscast, the U.S. and Israel discussing a possible strike on Iran's nuclear facilities. Get all the breaking details coming up. Hey folks, Erick Stakelbeck here. Welcome to the Watchman Newscast. Well, they are at it again in Vienna. Officials from the Iranian regime, along with officials from China, Russia, Britain, France, Germany, and indirectly diplomats from the United States, are all gathered in the Austrian capital, and they are trying to revive that disastrous Iran nuclear deal. Now, I said U.S. officials were meeting with their Iranian counterparts indirectly because, as one of Iran's stipulations for the talks, U.S. representatives are not permitted to be in the same room with Iranian diplomats. So you have British, French, German, Chinese, and Russian diplomats with their Iranian counterparts in the same room, and I suppose U.S. diplomats in an adjacent room. Right off the bat, folks, that should give you an indicator that these talks aren't going to go so smoothly, and surprise, surprise, they have not. Now, they started back up after a 5-month hiatus on Monday, November 29th. And by Friday, December 3rd, European and U.S. diplomats were basically throwing their hands in the air, flying back home and saying, hey, these talks are on hold. Our Iranian counterparts just aren't serious about coming to a new agreement. Well, I guess there were some back-channel conversations over the past several days, and lo and behold, the talks started back up again today, Thursday, December 9th, once again in Vienna. The parties all met for 1 hour, and I guess they got the preliminaries out of the way now. Will they start back up in earnest tomorrow or next week? Stay tuned. It remains to be seen. But as this Iran talk chatter is continuing to unfold, we also have a great deal of chatter about a possible Israeli military strike against Iran's nuclear facilities. Folks, think about it, and we've talked about this often here on the newscast over the past several weeks, whether there is a new Iran nuclear deal, which would be an unmitigated disaster on many levels, which we have laid out here on the newscast, or whether Iran walks away from the negotiating table for good and decides to go into overdrive, enriching uranium and reaching that nuclear threshold. Either way, there is a very strong likelihood that Israel will feel compelled to take military action against Iran's nuclear facilities and to eliminate an existential threat. Well, now the plot thickens in that regard. Today, Reuters is reporting that a U.S. official shared with that outlet that during Benny Gantz, the Israeli defense minister's visit to Washington, D.C. this week, he will be discussing with top U.S. officials, including Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin and Secretary of State Antony Blinken, the possibility of joint U.S.-Israeli military drills to help prepare for a strike against Iran's nuclear weapons program. Is the Biden administration serious about the military option? I don't think so, folks, but what they could do in holding these drills with Israel would be at least to project some sign of force to the Iranian regime and say, hey, when we say all options are on the table, we mean it and we mean business. That doesn't necessarily mean that they do actually have intentions to strike Iran's nuclear weapons installations, but they want to at least project a show of strength to the Iranian regime and perhaps make Iran think twice and get them back to the negotiating table in a serious way. That's the U.S. perspective, I believe. On the other hand, I believe Israel is very serious about a possible strike, and serious, by the way, about going it alone if needed to eliminate this Iranian nuclear threat. Now, regardless of whether Israel and the U.S. hold these joint military drills, Israel reportedly, and these reports just came across the wire yesterday, is indeed planning to conduct large-scale military drills in spring 2022, simulating a possible strike, yes, against Iran's nuclear facilities. Now, I talked about this yesterday right here on our YouTube channel. during a Watchman Newscast live stream. Folks, every Wednesday, sometimes on Thursdays, but usually on Wednesdays, we are going live for one solid hour between 4 and 5 p.m. Eastern Time here on the channel. Here's a little taste of what you can expect from yesterday's newscast live stream. And remember, we have a Q&A session where you can interact with me and we go back and forth. I take your questions. I do my best to answer them. But here's a clip of me talking about the fact that Israel possibly intending to strike Iran's nuclear facilities is anything but a boy cried wolf scenario. And what does it mean, by the way, for the United States? I talked about it. Take a look. Israel in the spring, the Israel Defense Forces in particular, the Israeli Air Force, I'm sure, is planning a drill, a major drill, simulating an attack on Iran's nuclear facilities. This just broke before I came on the air. The Times of Israel is reporting it. Headline story there. And we knew this. We've been talking about on the newscast that Israel is putting over $1 billion towards preparation for a potential strike against Iran's nuclear facilities. And we knew they were writing up the plans, a blueprint for such a strike. Remember, Aviv Kohavi, the chief of staff for the Israel Defense Forces, he's talked about it. Benny Gantz, the defense minister, he's talked about it. Naftali Bennett, the prime minister, he's also talked about it. When you have the top voices in the defense and security establishment, the head of Mossad, Israel's spy service, said, I think it was late last week or was it early this week, a few days ago, David Barnea, he also said, Mossad will never allow Iran to go nuclear. We will do everything, this organization, the Mossad, will do everything in our power to prevent a nuclear Iran. Folks, when all the key players are talking about it, it ain't bluffing. And it's not a boy who cried wolf type situation. But some people have commented, this is the boy who cried wolf. Israel keeps talking about it and they never do it. Just do it already. So many people have commented and said that. And hey, I understand that sentiment. You're sick of hearing about it. And Israel keeps saying, hey, hold us back. Hold us back. We're going to do it. And they're warning the world, rightfully so, saying, guys, we don't want to do this on our own, nor should we have to do this on our own, because this is a global problem. A nuclear Iran doesn't just affect Israel. It affects the entire region, the Sunni Arab nations, of course, in the immediate proximity in the Middle East, but it affects America, Europe, the world, a Middle East arms race, which would surely kick off after Iran announces or reveals its nuclear capability. Iran's proxies with a nuclear umbrella to operate with a free hand. Could you imagine Hezbollah and Hamas with a nuclear armed Iranian master behind them? And what about Iran's massive ballistic missile program, including intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs? You only build ICBMs for one reason and one reason only, to mount them with a nuclear warhead. And they are designed to do exactly what their name says, to travel across continents, across oceans. Ladies and gentlemen, those ICBMs are not for Israel. They're not for Saudi Arabia. In large part, they're not even for Europe. They are for the nation that Iran's regime refers to as the Great Satan, the United States. Remember, Israel in the Iranian regime's ideology is only the little Satan. It's America that is the great Satan and the ultimate prize. Do not kid yourself. That's why those ICBMs are being diligently worked on in Iran as we speak, in addition to the nuclear warheads that could be mounted onto them. Folks, again, that was a clip from our weekly Watchman Newscast live stream. Join us Wednesday, December 15th, right here on the channel for our next live stream between 4 and 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Hey, good stuff. We really dig in deeper to the issues of the day. Here on our daily newscast, we go for several minutes, but we go for one solid hour, and I share on the live streams information that you won't hear on the newscast on a normal day. And also, again, we take your questions and I share some testimony, some of my personal stories. You get to know me a little bit better. I get to know you a little bit better. So it's a lot of fun on our live streams. We encourage you to join. And also remember, tonight, the Watchman TV show on TBN, our 30-minute weekly show. at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. Then tomorrow, Friday, December 10th, at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Hey, amid all of these wars and rumors of wars, guess what? God Almighty still sits on the throne, so take heart and be encouraged and stay in prayer. Until tomorrow, thanks for joining us here on the newscast. God bless you. And remember, never hold your peace. Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. If you enjoyed this episode and want to see more, make sure you go ahead and hit the like button, click subscribe, and tap the bell icon to turn on notifications for new Watchman Newscast episodes every weekday.